Here on the RunTok Live podcast, we'd like to take a moment before this episode begins to celebrate the life of the late Kelvin Kiptum.
Kelvin broke the marathon world record at the Chicago Marathon last year, becoming the first person ever to officially run under 2 hours and 1 minute.
Unfortunately, we'll never get to see Kiptum break the elusive 2-hour barrier as he tragically passed away last weekend in a car accident in his home country of Kenya.
As marathon runners, we all share a connection through the pain and suffering we all put ourselves through over the 26.2 mile distance that we run.
Even though Kelvin made it look almost effortless.
There's no doubt that he appreciated the hard work and dedication that each of us put into the sport.
So please join us with a moment of silence
as we remember the man who climbed to the top of our sport in just a short time.
And as we continue to honor him with every mile.
What happens when three runners
from different parts of the country
with different running stories
all get together?
Pure
RunTok
madness.
So listen in as we talk about all things running related.
And some things that maybe aren't running related.
As it's bound to be a good time. This is
RunTok Live.
Very nice, very nice.
All right. That's all I'm going to play, you know.
What are we talking about today?
I don't know. Anyways, welcome to another episode of RunTok Live.
What is up?
Wow, that got me in a mood, man.
Doesn't it? I mean,
awesome.
We're going to be doing that all year long. Or at least until like August, right?
We're going to hear that, I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
So much to talk about. Olympic trials, guys. Olympic trials.
Yeah. You had a first-hand account of what they had going on down there, Jake. You were there.
I was, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I'll tell you what, I'm not a morning person, and I did have to get up at the crack of dawn to go watch this thing, but it was so worth it. It was really cool. I was surprised. I'll say this. I was hesitant, and you guys have heard me talk about it before. I was worried about Orlando being the destination for the trials and the time of day that it was going to be. I feel like for the most part, though, it all worked out.
It did. I mean, they pushed it back. They pushed it back a couple hours, right? And
Yep.
it still got pretty hot, but it wasn't that bad overall.
That's what I was going to say. It did still get warm. There were still some DNFs and some people that dropped out. We can talk about that. But it was a lot better than it could have been. And I look at it as a plus for sure.
I saw where Clayton Young said he went through 5 hats throughout the race. And he was giving out prizes to anybody who got one of his hats that he discarded and DM'd him on Instagram with it. So,
well, and it's funny because it made it hard to track him visibly because, this was a looped course, but every time he came across this loop, he was wearing a different hat. And so it was like, where's the guy with the green hat? No, he's not. He's got an orange hat now. Like, it made it tough to track him.
I didn't realize he had different color hats. I was worried about his red top.
No, he had different hats on. And one hat I saw, I wanted to see what it was kind of cool. It was for the listener, you can't see what I'm visibly showing you, but it was like a triangle build. I don't know if he purposely formed it that way, but it was like an aerodynamic triangle build. It looked like the tip of a plane type of hat.
Really?
I haven't seen before, so I got to look that up.
Dude, I want to do a shout out to Zach Panning, who led that race for how long? 18 miles?
Was
it 18 miles?
That
was incredible. And it sucks that he didn't hold on to it. Spoiler alert, Zach Panning did not make the Olympic team, but he made that race. Like, he knew what he had to do and he went after it. Like, that was awesome.
It kind of reminds you of, and again, we reference Prefontaine a lot, but the 72 Munich Olympics, Prefontaine made that race happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ended up taking the lead, driving the pace, and then he ended up getting fourth place overall, as a result. But he's known as a guy that made that race happen. Like, this is the same thing, because it was him, Clayton, Connor, for most of that race, and Clayton and Connor, stayed side by side, kind of feeding off of Panning.
And the reason that he did too, I don't know if you guys want to go over like the qualifications and exactly what was going on, because it's really confusing, right? It was really confusing, especially on the men's side, because we only had 2 people that made the Olympic standard, and therefore we only had 2 spots, or we only have 2 spots as of right now. Yep. So, Panning, he knew that he not only had to get in the top 3, but he had to run that Olympic standard.
Yeah, which I think was the 2:08, right? Is the Olympic standard?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. I feel like that 3rd spot is going to get unlocked, because we've got Boston coming up. And I mean, imagine the slew of people who didn't make the team, who are in the 4th, 5th, and 6th place, that are going to be like trying to get that 3rd spot unlocked.
But it kind of stinks though now, because like whoever, it doesn't matter who unlocks it. Was it career? He's the one that's going to go, right? Like,
but there's alternates that go.
How does the alternates work? How did the alternates get to go?
So I don't know if it's the next 3 in line, but just in case somebody has to back out the day of the race, there are alternates that they send.
I was going to say, they go, but they don't compete unless simply called upon. And I believe they take 3 alternates.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying, like, numbers 4, 5, and 6 are really going to be hoping somebody unlocks that spot, if it's not themselves that unlocks it at another, like a race before the Olympics.
What I haven't done, I haven't looked to see who is, who's in line to do another marathon right now. You know what I mean? Like, I know we have, is it Rochester? What's the one that Kiptum is doing? Is it Rochester?
Rotterdam,
that's what it was.
Yeah. Rotterdam's really fast. Valencia already happened. But yeah, Rotterdam's a really fast one. And then, of course, Tokyo is pretty fast too, and so is London.
Yeah, I don't look at Boston as, I know you had mentioned Boston, Carolyn, but that's not a race that I would put my eggs in that basket hoping to run that qualifying time.
Well, and does Boston count too? Because Ryan Hall's Boston time doesn't qualify, isn't technically the American record, right?
So I know it doesn't qualify for records because of the downhill grade, and it's the point to point is too far apart.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. Actually, that's something worth looking into. Does Boston qualify for them?
Yeah. Not really sure about that. But all in all, it was a great day. I mean, obviously the men's side was different than the women's side. Women's side, we had 10 women that had already met the qualifying time, and oh man, give it up for all 3 of those girls too. I mean, that was just insane.
Listen, so did y'all hear about the Fiona O'Keefe had a gel in her sports bra and it was chafing, so her bib and complete front was like covered in blood.
I sent that text to you.
Yeah, you didn't.
Yeah, I don't want to hear. I have no excuse now. If Fiona can get through a marathon in hot weather with a chafing gel, my complaints go out the window.
Yeah, no, the girls' weight race was definitely fun. I was a little heartbroken. Yeah, kudos to all of them; they all deserve to go. There was that part of me that really wanted Sarah Hall to get in there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And she was in a good position up until really the last few miles.
Mm-hmm.
It got tough. I mean, look at those average paces, though. I mean,
Dakota Lindbergh. I mean, out of nowhere. right? Out of nowhere.
So the cool thing about that, and I sent you guys the picture, I was, towards the end of the race, I went to the finish line and I was standing at the finish line. Like I got lucky and got a good spot. And I was sitting next to this guy and he was talking. I was like, yeah, my daughter's running, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, that's cool. But I didn't even think to ask who your daughter is or whatever. Turns out it was Lindworm's, and that was Lindworm's dad. And so I took the picture of when she came up to hug him, and he was like right next to me. So I have that picture of her hugging her dad right there, like next to me, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
So
but I mean, Sarah Hall is in the 5th spot, so she'll still go to Paris as an alternate,
Well, maybe it's still we still got we got to see what else happens, but
yeah. Jessica McLean wasn't too optimistic about her chances at the 4 spot, so
yeah. But and it was neat.
But it was a pretty awesome day.
Yeah, Des Linden, her being there, like she knew. I think Des knew she wasn't getting a top 3 spot going in. She was there, just racing her race, and it was fun, like watching her hype up the crowd. She would run down the loops and she'd be lifting her arms up, hyping everybody up. Like it was pretty cool. It was neat. It was neat to see.
Do you think this is her last Olympic trials?
I mean, no, I don't even think it's Rupp's last Olympic trials, but I think that they both are kind of accepting of the fact that they probably ran their last Olympics, right?
Yeah, Sarah Hall was talking about it. She was like, I mean, never say never, I never thought I'd be here at 40, but she might end up at the next trials, but hard to see them, and I hate to be a negative Nancy there, but hard to see either one of them making another Olympic team.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's a lot of people, I mean, at the end of the day, most of the people that go to the trials, that was their goal, qualify for the trials. Like they know they're not going to the Olympics. Like that's the end of the road, not the end of the road, but that's their marquee goal. It was pretty neat to see, especially I noticed it more on the guy side, but there were a lot of older men that were still running, like men that were older than me that were qualified for the trials. So I think, the guy that got third, I think he was 43.
Yeah. Well, was he?
He was 40 something. I want to say he was 42, 43.
I thought it was the 4th place guy. Quebec, that he set the Masters record. He set the Masters American record.
And Sarah Hall set the women's Masters American record too.
Okay, yeah.
But no, it was cool. So there were actually 2 athletes from the DFW area that went and ran in the trials, and one of them is in her upper 30s, and then the other is fresh out of college. Like she ran track for Wake Forest, and so it was cool to just track them and be like, oh, I personally know 2 people that are participating, and despite the weather, they both had great days. Like they both. Their splits were pretty even. They're speedsters, so it was pretty cool.
And back on Zach Panning, of course, I was rooting for him because I honestly didn't know Zach Panning before the trials. But as soon as I saw that he was from Fort Wayne, Indiana, Jake, you were just in his neighborhood too long ago. But I was like, yeah, Indiana, represent. And he went to like Grand Valley State.
Wow. But yeah, he runs for the Hanson's Brooks Distance Project, which Des Linden used to run for. And I believe she's still good friends with the Hanson brothers, but it's just every time I see that, I go back to her autobiography and, her history from, working with them. And so, but no, go Zach, man.
So I'm going to run a name by you guys, and I want to see if the name rings a bell. The name is Megan Kripchen. Offhand, does that name ring a bell?
What name was that?
Megan Kripchen.
No, got nothing.
So she, in my opinion, was the most inspiring person at the Olympic trials this year. And the reason being She ran the Olympic trials 7 months pregnant. She was 7 months pregnant, and she still ran.
Wow.
And it was so cool to see. She got probably the loudest cheers from everybody. 35 years old, 7 months pregnant. Obviously, she wasn't pregnant when she qualified for the trials initially. And she said she got the all clear from her doctors. Now, she did end up dropping at mile 18. Like, that's where she officially withdrew from the race. And that was per her doctor's, like, orders. Like, you can do 18 miles. But that was really cool. And up until mile 18, she wasn't even in last place. Like, I think there was only 1 or 2 people behind her, but just the fact that you still showed up 7 months pregnant, 35 years old, and you ran 18 miles with the country's best runners. Like, that's,
Yeah, I'm looking at her results, and her average pace was a 7:18.
Yep.
Like, I don't know anybody that could run that pace pregnant, or really very many people who could run that not pregnant.
Right.
Yeah, it was really,
major kudos there. Major kudos.
Yeah, she was one. I've tried to look her up because I was like, man, I want her on this podcast. Like, I want to talk to her.
That's just amazing.
So let's talk about the winners for a second. We'll start on the men's side, but we saw Mantz and Clayton Young. They were 1-2. Mantz finished first, but can we be real here? Clayton Young.
Young let him win.
Young let him win, which is amazing. That's such a big statement to the character of Clayton Young. I mean, we heard all race long. If you were watching it on Peacock, you heard them talking about how close they were the entire race as far as training partners, former classmates, teammates at BYU. And to see that at the end was just so inspiring. And Clayton was just having a great time with it. He was having so much fun. And it was a massive kudos to him for letting his training partner win that and forfeiting $15,000 in prize money in the wake of that.
That's the difference between $80K and $65K right there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, listen, would you rather win the Olympic trials and get famous for that, or would you rather let somebody else win, take second place, and be known for that?
Well, I gotta say, if it comes down to, and I don't think it will, obviously we know some of the big names at the Olympics, but if it would come down to it at the Olympics, I don't think so. Like, come on. Like, no way.
Well, and they have perks in their contract too for placing XYZ in the trials and placing XYZ in the actual Olympics. So we say he gave up $15K. He realistically probably gave up more than that because of whatever their perks were in their contract.
Right. And not to take anything away from Mantz either. Mantz ran a great race. He was obviously the fastest American coming into it. I really liked Mantz jumping straight up to the marathon after college. He dabbled in some 5Ks and 10Ks on the track, but I always felt like he was one of those runners that's just better the further distance he goes. So I think it was a great idea for him to just immediately jump to the marathon and put in those miles, and it really showed. And congratulations to Mantz for winning the Olympic trials for sure.
And I do have to give a quick shout out. That this... Well, I was just going to say, I have to give a quick shout out to, one of our guests that we had on here, and one of my friends, Sim Sultanov, who did go down there, did qualify, did run. He ended up dropping a little after mile 10, and it was nothing to do with the conditions. He ended up having some pretty extreme stomach issues that he actually had going into the race. Like, that morning, he woke up with it, and he was sick, and it just couldn't do it. But I'll tell you what, I talked to him yesterday, and you talk to these elite runners and it really puts you in your place. Like, when you're like, okay, comparing me to you, like, you really are elite. Because he goes, yeah, man, I just, I went out at a 5:09 pace and was just feeling good. It's like, you were breezing through a 5:09 pace for 10 miles. and you're talking about how that was feeling good.
I was a little confused though, because like right before the trial started, I saw Sim's alter ego ad talking about how he never wore hats before Alter Ego. I was expecting him to wear an Alter Ego hat at the trial.
Yeah, and speaking of which, so you guys know he got picked up by a Tracksmith. And I'll tell you, yeah, he got sponsored by Tracksmith. Was it Tracksmith? Yeah, Tracksmith.
Wow.
So
Very
he got
cool.
sponsored by them, but
I think that's what he was wearing at the trials, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And they ended up, the Tracksmith presence there was significant. There was a ton of runners that were for Tracksmith, so they went pretty hard on picking up some athletes for to sponsor. And they had their own tent, their own section there, their Tracksmith team. Like it was pretty legit.
Good for them.
So
Good for them.
Shout out to you, Sim, if you're listening.
But before we move on to the women's winners, though, I want to talk about Connor Mantz's shoes. Did you guys notice he was wearing the OG Alpha Flies?
Mm-hmm.
The first gen Alpha Flies. He wasn't wearing the 3s. He wasn't wearing the 2s. He was wearing the OG Alpha Flies. And I think Galen Rupp was, too.
Do you think those were his lucky shoes?
I've heard a lot of people that have preferred the OG Alpha Flies over the second ones for sure. I've heard some better things about the third ones, but I've not heard anybody say that the first ones are better than the third ones, but I was still shocked by that.
Yeah, I want to see someone break out the 4% again.
That would be old school. And then, of course, Clayton was wearing the Asics prototype shoe, so we don't really know anything about that one yet.
Yeah.
And have they released those to the public yet? Like the Asics?
I think they released no, they didn't. They released the name of it, and I don't think it comes out until later on.
Okay, so the reason I say that is Brooks released their Hyperion Elite 4s, and that was because I feel like they would be illegal for the trials because enough people could get their hands on them. CJ Alberson helped design them, so
Zach Panning was wearing them, I think, right?
Yeah, they're fast shoes.
Yeah, I saw them. They look pretty snazzy.
Yeah, I think they were trying to compete with, or this is what I think personally. I don't speak for Brooks, but they look and they remind me of the Vaporflies, like the new Vaporflies.
Yeah, they're pretty streamlined. I do like the way that they look. I didn't look into any of the metrics or anything yet, so I don't know what kind of drop it has or what the weight is like, but they do look pretty good. And I've been really liking my Ghost Maxes still. So,
did you hear that, Jake?
Yeah, I know. I heard it.
Okay. Well,
sorta. Well, you know what? I hate to say it, but Brooks had a decent presence. Decent, they weren't in the top 3 in anything, but a decent presence.
What do you? Yeah, I guess they weren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alberson was a minute off.
I think the surprise shoe for me, if we're just talking shoes, right? If we're just not looking at the feet that are in the shoes, but the shoes themselves, it's the Puma. Well, Puma Deviates, and like the runner that was in them was very talented, but I'm very surprised to see Puma, being in the top 3, at least on the women. We're talking about. I know we skipped to the women.
They had 2 of the 3. Yeah. There were 2 of 3.
Oh, was it who?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. Because O'Keefe,
Fiona and Dakota both were wearing the new Puma Deviates. Yeah,
that's right.
They're called the Puma. They were released as the Puma test shoe or new test shoe, but yeah, they're the Deviates. But
now, if you look at the top 10 women, the Metaspeed Skies were like the top. There were more of those shoes in the top 10 than anything else. You really only got. I mean, Nike only has in the top 10 women 1. I'm looking at that right. There was only 1 Nike runner, and it was Asics that kind of. Yeah, they didn't go to the top 3, but they got out of the next 7, they made 5 of them.
Well, again, like I said, even on the men's side, Connor Mantz wore the OGs, but. The women's side definitely had the Puma representation there for sure. Those
Mhm.
yellow tops, they stood out pretty good, didn't they? Covered in blood or not.
Yeah.
So we got to talk about the race kits. Um, did y'all see the Hoka race kits?
I don't think I did, or at least I
They
don't remember them.
Yeah, so they allowed their athletes to write that or like put the name of somebody that they were running for in their singlet. So,
Oh,
yeah, and they had a video of it and it was awesome because I think Alafine ran for like her grandma or somebody close to her, and it was pretty emotional.
So let me ask you guys this as runners. Let's say you qualified for the trials. Now you qualify for the trials, and you know realistically, deep down inside, you have zero shot of qualifying for the Olympics beyond the trials. How are you treating the trials? Are you going to go in and just have fun and then soak up the experience? Or are you going to go in and try to run your best race? How would you go into those trials?
I, I mean, why wouldn't you try and give it your best? Like that's as close to the world stage as you're gonna get. Why not try and just because I know people who set PRs at the Olympic trials. So why not try,
yeah, and I think it would have to come down to one, like we talked about earlier. Is there any kind of incentive on my brand side? Do I have any other means of wanting to finish outside of trying to qualify, right? But at the same time, you know what kind of field you're in too. You know that everybody there is fast. I mean, they had to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, and the course was a loop course specifically designed to aid people to run fast. So you don't get a lot of opportunities like that to really push yourself. So going into it, whether you got a chance to qualify or not, I feel like it would be a great chance to PR.
Yeah. And where I'm going out with this is, you look at the stats. I'm looking strictly on the men's side. 150 runners, right? 150 men that got in. Of those 150 men, only 41 of them actually ran what would have otherwise been considered the minimum qualifying standard to even get into the trials. There were runners, that were running obviously not there to race. Like they were there just having fun. I mean, they were running 238, 241, 245, 250. I feel like a lot of those runners were in the boat that I put myself in, where I would, knowing that, okay, if I'm 45 years old, I'm not going to qualify for the trials. There's no way I'm running a 208 or faster. I'm not running with Connor, with, any of those guys. I'm going to go have a blast. I'm going to take photos. I'm going to high five the fans. Like, I'm going to just soak it up. That's what I'm going to do, knowing that I'm probably never going to be able to do that at that stage again. So I'm probably not going to qualify again either, in all reality. So that's,
Yeah,
and I feel like a lot of people felt that way, and they treated it as such.
I feel that, but I feel like it's different, if you're not sponsored versus you're sponsored. Because I think if a brand is, paying, not well, some brands pay, but if you're getting all this free stuff and exposure, like why not make the brand proud? And I understand, like, if there's some people that are not, sponsored and they're like, I'm just gonna have a great day. But I feel like there's a lot more pressure on these athletes that are sponsored.
But I also think, so you make a good point, but at that stage, realistically, if you're not in the top 10, 15, you're not getting the exposure. Like, basically, and again, this is more of a matter of opinion, just based on what I've seen on TV in the past. Like, once you like break into 20 and further, like 20 to 150, those people are not really getting the exposure, right? They're not getting any extra exposure despite their brand. It's really those top guys. So, I mean, I see your point, but at the same time, I think the brands acknowledge that they're top guys. who are in the top 10 overall, those guys are going to get their exposure. And as long as they have someone in that top 10, they don't care about the 10 guys that are, ranked 100 to 150th. I don't want to say they don't care, but they're not as hyper focused on them.
I think you also got to take into account the Dakota Lindverms of, both sides. Dakota Lindverm, for instance, she has a deal with Puma, but she also works a full-time job. So how many of those people were at the trials, just out there trying to make their families and their coworkers proud? I think that's a driving motivation for more people too.
That was the story, remember in 2018, when Des Linden won Boston, and then the other guy, I forget his name, can't think of it. The guy, I think it's China or Japan, but he won it. And he was talking about how he works a full-time job. He works an office worker, he works in an office. And here he is, he just won the Boston Marathon, won $100,000, whatever the prize purse was at that year, I don't remember.
Yeah, because you just don't see that in other sports, like especially on a world stage or on television. So I think a lot of people, you probably have some people out there that maybe weren't in that top 10 or were maybe one of those 235 or 230 male runners that had this huge fan base of people that were just following along. Even though they knew that they weren't going to see them on TV, they were still watching and in anticipation of their coworker or their family member finishing,
Yeah. And so I'm looking at the last guy that finished. His name is Matthew Rand, and he started at a 5:30 pace, which is pretty respectable. And it just looked like he just got tired because his last split was at like an 8:14. So
well, also, we talked about the weather. It was hot. Like, it wasn't hot to a lot of people that are from the South. We looked at it as like I was wearing a sweatshirt the whole time that I was down there. But for all intents and purposes, and for running a marathon, it was still decently hot. And a lot of people, probably did not adapt that well to that. So.
Yeah, and that's what I was hearing. So I had a friend that was on the sidelines as well, and she was like, "It's hot," and I was like, no. And she goes, "I'm not talking about me." She said, "I'm talking about the runners. Like, I can't even imagine running like 2 miles." And she lives in Arizona. And I was like, if she's saying it's hot, then something must be up.
Yeah. Well, so another hot take. We had talked about the prize money, right? And I think it was 80,000 for first, 65 for second. Going down. Do you guys think that's a fair amount for prize money for the Olympic trials? And where I'm going at with this is compare it to the prize money of the world majors. Boston Marathon, for example, $150,000 first place, but it's only $80,000 for the America's best who had qualified for that race, and they're getting paid half at best, for first place. What are your thoughts?
I think you gotta think a little bit about the revenue that it's generating. Obviously, Boston Marathon's going to make more money because of the people that can be in it, right? But you're right, Jake. I really feel like our athletes that we're going to send over there, we should, yeah. And I don't know, maybe there's not a monetary value that really shows how much we really appreciate what they're doing for our country. But I agree with you. I think that it should be a little bit more. I'm not saying it needs to be as much as the majors. I don't think that at all, but I do think it should be a little bit more.
Yeah, and I saw somewhere that athletes, professional runners, do not make as much as you think they do.
Mm-hmm.
And
they really don't.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's literally 0.0001% of runners make the trials, and that should totally be celebrated.
Well, yeah, obviously compared to all the other sports out there, like running doesn't even have a leg to stand on when it comes to salaries for their runners. And there is that top maybe 2 to 3% that can legitimately say their job is to be a runner, like that's where their income is coming from. And then there's, the Lindworms of the group, like you pointed out, Chase, where they can't rely on that, at least long term. She's a coach too. I don't know if she has her own coaching company, so she coaches, and it's crazy. And I don't, unless you have been a runner, you don't really realize how much work a runner has to put in to get to this level. And I'm not degrading anyone else in any other professional sport. They all have to do a ton of work. But I think it's easy for the people in these other sports to look at our sport and go, oh, you run? Like, that's okay, no big deal. Like, I have to, lift weights every day and go on a special diet and blah, 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 whatever football players do, basketball players do, etc. Like, I'm looking at Lindworms. I'm on her Strava right now, and I'm looking at her weeks leading into this race. All of them 130 miles, 135 miles, 137 miles. And that's like into her taper phase. So, like, it's pretty crazy. Like, that's a big ass number. Sorry, that's a big number.
Hey, my mom is listening to this, Jake. Watch your language.
I did hit the explicit button on the last episode. I wasn't really sure, but
I just had an Avengers moment. If you ever watched Avengers: Age of Ultron, the opening scene when Captain America gets mad at Iron Man, and he goes, "Language."
It's all right. It's a good, I always use cussing as an icebreaker whenever I don't do it anymore. I did it more when I was on a night shift and I could get away with that sort of thing. But at work, I'd go and talk to new hires every week, and I'd just walk in and drop a cuss word just to break the ice, and it made them feel comfortable with me, made them more chatty. But anyway.
Well, anyways, back
no
to
cussing, Jake.
Back to the topic at hand. I apologize for the virgin ears out there that heard me say the A word. But the point is, runners have to put in a ton of work. And it's not just their running, right? You look at their miles. Well, they also got their cross training. They also got their strength training. They also got their most likely extreme nutrition plans that they're following. They're doing just as much as any other athlete in the world to get to the level that they are at. And it's easy to not realize that. And I can look at a football player and I know, dude, you put in a ton of work to get to where you are. I can look at a basketball player and dude, you put in a ton of work to get where you are. Golf, even tennis, but I feel like it's easy from an outsider looking in at runners and go, oh, yeah, a lot of people can do what you do when they can't.
Yeah, you're right. And even comparing it to the NIL deals too, I'd like to see some of those numbers as well for the college athletes right now compared to, maybe some of the, I'm not saying football sports or football or basketball or anything like that, but maybe some of the volleyball players, the swimmers, see how it compares to those type of sports.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't even see, is the prize purse the same for men and women for the trials? I didn't pay attention to that, in all honesty.
I did not either.
Let's go. I'll look that up. But yeah, and I feel like there's probably a whole episode we could do there just on, the monetary value of running, for professional runners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and people don't realize how freaking expensive running is. So I got a new Garmin, guys. The watch itself was $450. Okay, $450. So running is so dadgum expensive.
No, it's not. It's cheap. Don't you hear everybody say that?
Oh my Lord! And people are like, "Oh, it's so easy." Yeah, it's so easy. You just put on your shoes, then run. Oh, really?
How much?
I was actually doing a breakdown today. I made a spreadsheet of like the different nutrition stuff that I take, the protein and my multivitamin, that type of stuff. And I was like, looked at it at the end. I was like, holy cow, I'm spending a lot of money on nutrition alone.
So if I was one of these Olympians or really fast runners, I think I would still keep a second job just so I could make sure I could afford all of, this extra running stuff and these other brands, that don't sponsor me.
Yep. Well, the good news is, as I'm looking this up, it was the same amount of prize money for men and women for the trials. So I like that.
As it should be.
And
As
Caroline,
it should be.
I don't want to brag, but I did get paid to be a runner. Because there's a couple times where I found some change on my run. I could think of 2 times in particular, and I think the grand total was like $1.70 something. Hey,
I'm so
running pays.
You've waited this long in our friendship to tell us that you get paid to run.
I was thinking about donating it to a charity. I'll probably put it in your name though. I want to make sure you get all the credit for that $1.70 donation, Carolyn.
I'm gonna start running with a metal detector.
Please do. Take pictures. Post those pictures online.
Hey, that is a Shark Tank idea in the making. We need to invent a pair of shoes that have a metal detector equipped to them.
See, it's all fun and games until you run over like a bunch of nails or a bunch of like crap that's not change.
Or you run over the treasure that's been missing from some ship that the sea dried out on that particular trail 700 years ago, right? You just never know, Carolyn. Why you got to be such a glass half full kind of person, all right? Or half empty.
Fine,
whatever.
I'll reach out to Mark Cuban. That's fine.
No, he quit Shark Tank, so can't do it with him anymore.
God, he sold the Mavs, quit Shark Tank. Like what?
He didn't sell 100% of the Mavs. He still is a minority owner now. He just sold the majority of his ownership.
Jeez, and Mavs tickets are now more expensive. I don't know if that's a coincidence. I don't know if that's because Luka dropped like 73 points in a game, but I cannot afford Mavs tickets anymore, man.
Carolyn, you're making me so proud right now, dropping NBA basketball stats. I love that.
Absolutely, man. I keep track of the Stars, the Mavericks, the Rangers.
Did they win that game?
What?
What's that?
Did they win that game that he dropped 70 some on?
Yes, they did. It wasn't like by a huge margin.
I was like, who was it not too long, a couple weeks ago?
It was Karl Anthony Towns from Minnesota that dropped 70 points and they lost the game.
Yeah. That was it.
Yep. And then my guy, Sacramento Kings, Domantas Sabonis, got snubbed for the All-Star. I know I don't even want to get started. Chase read my post on Facebook. I'm still so.
Well, I saw the crazy stat about Trae Young too. That he's been there 3 times in NBA history. Has somebody averaged 25 points, 10 assists, and not made the All-Star team? And 2 of those have been Trae Young. I was like, that sucks. That's some bullshit right there. I'll drop the S-bomb to bail you out, Jake.
All right, Carolyn, your turn. We need a curse word by the end of the show.
No. Right. So here's a fun story. So I cannot curse at school, and I don't. So I was helping a teacher go through supplies, and I was saying all sorts of words. I was like, gosh darn it, and like, holy cow. And she goes, Carolyn, you're not even trying to cuss. And I said, ma'am, there could be children. Okay. There are babes wandering the halls. So,
all right. I think the new challenge for 2024 is to get Carolyn to cuss one time on this podcast.
It probably won't happen, man. Now that I work with kids, like I get creative.
We'll see. I'm going to make it, even if we have to bleep it out or, cut it out and no one will ever hear it. It's happening.
Beautiful. Yeah, if you could bleep it out. My mom seriously listens to this podcast.
It's okay. I'm pretty sure she's cursed before.
Well.
If we're going to stick with other sports real quick, I'll throw my heartbreaking news out. My manager for Liverpool announced that he was going to be leaving Liverpool at the end of the season. So I've been dealing with that. It's been a tough one for me to hang on to.
Man, I'm sorry for your loss.
It's
then
rough.
And then you got Jim Harbaugh leaving college, going back to the NFL.
We all called that one, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little shocked. I feel like it was different for Harbaugh than it is for like Saban.
Mm-hmm.
Saban went to the NFL and didn't have any success. Harbaugh was successful. He went to the Super Bowl when he was in the NFL. So I mean, he at least kind of knew what he was doing. But yeah, Chargers though, I was a little shocked by that move.
No, and I have to say for the listeners, you are now getting a real life reality check that while we love running here, we love sports here, just in general. But
and some things that are maybe not running related.
Some things that
there you go.
Just in case we don't get the intro song uploaded onto this episode.
My gosh. So I kind of want to switch gears back to running, and I want to talk about some good news and some bad news that happened with the trials.
Okay.
So, good news. We all predicted Emily Sisson would make the trials, and she did. The bad news is I had Kiera D'Amato making the team, and she did not.
I didn't actually see what happened to her. I saw she dropped real fast. What happened?
Dropped early. Yeah. I heard, now again, I can't verify any of this because I haven't actually done my research, but from what I heard from other runners, including Sim, it was heat related. It was literally just heat related dropout.
Because she looked comfortable the last time I saw her. She was in first, or she was right up there with with the lead, and then next thing you know, she was gone. You couldn't even see her anymore.
Yeah, her Instagram post said she got overheated and her glutes gave out.
Okay. Which was probably related to being overheated. Just her muscles not responding.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's where you worry about Florida. And you look back to LA when the trials were in LA. What was that? 3 trials ago, I believe, 2 or 3 trials ago. It was the same thing. It was, the heat got to a lot of people at those LA Olympic trials, and a lot of people dropped. I think at that point it was a 50% drop rate between men and women.
Wow.
So my question is, why do they keep having the trials in these really warm climates? Like, why not have a race up north?
There's a lot of cities that I'm sure USATF would love to have the trials in, but the reality is the cities don't want the trials there because of the costs. There's a lot of cost that gets involved with that.
And it's not bringing in a lot of revenue like the other,
exactly, and it's not
like your big marathons do.
You get a team or a place like Orlando. The last 2 have both been in the South, Atlanta and Orlando, right? 7 hours apart from each other, and those are like Orlando is a tourist attraction place regardless. So you get a city like Atlanta that was, and again, this is my opinion, but it was just not the most attractive place to a lot of people, and they needed something to like, hey, we held the trials here, because now they got the big old park, where the trials were, that you go there and there's a big old memorial for it, and it's kind of a tourist attraction in Atlanta now.
Right. Orlando literally had nothing to lose, and they were already having the Pro Bowl there that weekend too. So
the next day.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I entered a drawing at one of my viewing spots I don't even know if I won. I should check and see.
Can we talk about your viewing spots for a second, Jake? So tell us about the atmosphere surrounding, because I saw, obviously watching it on Peacock, you could see a lot of the homes, the people standing outside their homes, but you were you had to go to your own specified viewing spot. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so there were, along the course, they had designated spectator zones. And these were like zones where they went all out for the spectators. So it was more about the spectator experience than it was obviously for the runners. So they had bands playing and food trucks out. Of course there were bathrooms equipped there, and vendors I got a ton of free stuff from the vendors. Like I got a ton of the cowbells, the USATF cowbells. Every vendor had something that was themed for the Olympic trials that they were just giving away. Towels. So it was pretty neat. It was almost like the viewing sections were an event within themselves. Just going and being a part of that. All the news stations were at those viewing areas, so that's where they were doing their interviews from. My view spot in particular was the biggest viewing area. Like I picked that one because I knew it was going to be like just have the biggest crowd. And it was also the spot where you could see the runners the most if you just stayed in that one spot. You were guaranteed to see them 4 times. All the other spots, you were guaranteed to see them 3 times. And this is because this particular view spot, it was part of the first 2-mile loop and then the 3 8-mile loops. The other spots didn't have that 2-mile loop viewing option. Now you could go outside of the view spots, which I didn't know. I thought you had to go to one of these designated viewing areas to watch it. That wasn't true. You could technically go along the course at any point in time. Like the finish line area, that whole street, there was only one designated viewing area, but that whole street was just lined with people, to watch it. But it was worth it. Like I said, I hung out there for 85% of the race. The other 15%, once the last runner from the last loop crossed, I ran over to the finish line area, knowing that they were headed over there, within a few miles. And it was 2 blocks away. Like I could walk to the finish line from my view spot. So I like how they did it. Lots of security. I felt safe. I got to meet other cool people. I dropped our podcast name quite a bit while I was just standing in line watching the runners.
We need to get little cards.
Right?
Never mind. That's
I wish I had a shirt because I was dropping it like crazy.
We need to get business cards with a QR code on it.
Yeah, like the first loop, I pointed out Sim Sultanov. I was like, yeah, we had him on our podcast, and everyone's like, oh, what's your podcast? And then I talked about Craig Engels. Like, yeah, we had Craig Engels on. You know who he is? Oh, yeah, I love Craig Engels. So I was dropping it. I admit I went and looked at our viewer account yesterday to see if anyone actually followed. So yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
I may or may not have spam messaged all the top finishers on Instagram that day to ask them about being on the podcast. So, haven't heard anything back yet.
I laughed a little out loud when you said that because I immediately reached out to the top 3 women, and in particular I reached out to our third place girl because I had taken that picture of her and her dad, and I thought it was a really cool picture. I was like, all right, no one else took this picture. Like I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I took it. So I messaged her, and obviously, like I'm not, we're not friends or anything like that. So I sent her a message first, a written message, saying, hey, I took this really cool picture of you. I know you don't know me, but I just happened in the right place at the right time. I was talking to your dad, and I really wanted to share it with you. And I hit send. Well, I couldn't send the picture after that because after that, it doesn't let me send any more messages until she approves my message that I sent her. So I just sent her this message saying I took a cool picture of her, and it won't let me send any more messages to her.
But did you tag her in the picture when you posted it?
So I haven't posted it. That's the thing. This is strictly.
So there's where you go. Because that's how we got Craig Engels, right? Because I tagged him in the picture, and then he commented on the picture. So.
Okay, well, I'm doing that tonight as soon as we're done with
Yeah. Post it, tag her, tag Dakota Lindberm. If after you see Jake's post and you come and listen to this episode, we would really love to have you on the pod. I'll tell you what, having Kara Goucher call the race was amazing. Yep. With the fact that Dakota Lindberm got third, because Kara Goucher knew her. She knew about her, and she pointed out really early on when Dakota took the lead at one of the early stages of the race. She took the lead for like a mile or so. Well, and Kara Goucher pointed out that she always smiles when she's running, and I couldn't stop thinking about that the whole race. Every time and she wasn't smiling like the whole time, but every like 10 seconds or so, you just kind of saw her teeth just like shine through, and it was like she just has this great smile, and it was just on full display.
So that's the
Aww.
picture I took.
Yeah.
It's the picture I took, and it's funny. She came up, that was her dad. She came up, she hugged him, and then she said, "Is this really happening?" That was what she said to him. "Is this really happening? Am I dreaming? Is this really happening?" She said it, and then the guy behind her is like the guy that's supposed to like keep her in line, and she goes, "I have to pull you away. I have to pull you away." And she like pulled her from her father, and then they went and did the flag picture that you've been seeing all over social media, and it was pretty cool to see all that. But yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that. I'm gonna tag her. Dang it.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Pretty awesome moment there that you caught.
Like I said, literally, I had no clue who it was. I got freaking lucky as heck.
We didn't point out. I don't think we pointed out either. Fiona O'Keefe, first full marathon. Full marathon, qualified with a half marathon, and went out and not only won, like dominated, totally dominated. Like it wasn't even. I mean, Emily Sisson came on late, but whew, she wasn't really close.
I mean, 30 seconds to
32
seconds apart. And then, I mean, it was close between Sisson and Lindworm, closer. Oh, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was further.
No, it wasn't. It was a few minutes apart.
Further. But,
Emily Sisson closed the gap in the last couple miles, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw a comment. So I was following like a Reddit live thread, and somebody goes, "Do you think Fiona O'Keefe knows this isn't a half?" And somebody commented like an hour later, was like, "I think she knows this is a full."
Like no, she just went one half after the other.
O'Keefe, what she did, and I actually have all of her splits right here because she was one of the runners I followed. And if you look at her splits, right, she was basically hitting from mile 18 to mile 24. She was hitting anywhere from 522 to 527, pretty consistently. Like she was like right on target. Mile 25 out of the blue, 508. Bust out of 508, like just crushed it, and then cruised in with a 522 again for mile.
I think 20. I messaged you at that point. I was like, dude, she's running faster than the guys did in the last few miles.
I mean, you heard Sam talking about how he was running a 509 pace.
Yeah.
She went at mile 25 and ran a 509 pace. Just to break
That's incredible.
Right.
That's incredible. And with a bloody bib and everything.
Well, I'm curious now. I want to look at
I was glad that happened though, and you pointed it out earlier, Carolyn, because I had the little mishap with my gels in Indianapolis.
You were a trooper, man. Okay, solid marathon time, no excuses.
I didn't even know about it until Jake pointed it out after the race. He was like,
"You're okay?"
Wow, so you were that in the zone.
Apparently. Well, I was so in the zone that race too, and not to backtrack or anything, but I actually missed my sister like late in the race too. Like she filmed me, she was yelling at me and screaming. She's got it all on video, and I just tunnel vision just right past her, didn't even notice.
So it's worth mentioning too. I'm looking at Connor Mantz's his splits, and he for the first half was going ridiculously fast, 452s, all between like 448, 452, basically all the way up to mile 18, 19, 20 actually. And then mile 22, he actually dropped significantly. They dropped to 507, 510, 516.
Mm-hmm.
Like they cruised in for sure. I think once they realized they had the breakaway, they could have gone a lot faster.
Well, after the race, him and Clayton were talking. Even Connor admitted that he was toast. Like he felt just done. Yeah. And Clayton just had all the energy, and Clayton was just like, dude, just stick with me. Just stick with me. I'll drag you in. And he does that, and then he lets him win.
Yeah. Yeah, that I'd like to pick his brain, but I'm sure there is obviously a friendship, like,
whether there is or there isn't, I think that a huge tip of the hat, a show of class for Clayton Young, and I didn't really realize it going into it. They talked a lot about how he was seen as an underdog. I didn't understand how one of the two people that qualified was an underdog, but much props to Clayton Young. I got it written on my freaking board back here, but yeah, he should totally be your kid's role model. Like, that dude is the stand-up guy of stand. He would be my man of the year for 2024 right now.
Yep.
Did he run Chicago?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's where him and Connor both hit the trial standard.
Okay.
Actually, I think Connor did once before that.
Okay.
But either way, they both did there.
Wow. And that may have been why people said he was the underdog, because wasn't he like 10th or 11th male at Chicago?
Yeah, he was, but he still was under the Olympic standard. So, and no other Americans were other than Connor. So,
yeah.
How do you not? I don't get that. How's he an underdog?
I don't know, man. In Chicago, he ran his PR of a 2:08 even.
Now, I did really like too. They had they had Galen Rupp on right before the race. Not live; it was a recording from before. But Galen Rupp was talking about how the trials are different than running like the majors or running any other marathon, because in the trials you're actually racing against the people. You're racing against the guy next to you, whereas a lot of times in the marathons he was talking about how most of the guys out there are going for personal bests. They're trying for national records or personal bests, and you're racing against the clock itself. But in the trials, they're different. You got to race against the guy next to you. You got to be aware of what they're going through. You got to know when to make your move versus when they're going to make their move. And I really thought that was a very cool take from Galen Rupp. He's one of those people. Not a lot of people have that experience that he has, and to be able to talk about it on that level.
Well, and I think that's why more often than not at the trials, you're not seeing the best times from the runners. Again, they're like you said, their time isn't their top priority. Their places their top priority.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
but because going into the race and the situation that the men were in, only having 2 spots unlocked, and that's even more kudos to Zach Panning for what he did, because he knew if he wanted to make that team, he had to make that time, and he went for it. He didn't make it by place, he didn't make it by time, but he went for it, and it was really inspiring to watch him.
Yeah, he'll be there in Paris. I'm pretty confident of it.
Think you like a marathon alternate or like another event?
Yeah, I think he'll be there as an alternate.
How many alternates get to go?
3.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Basically, in a worst case scenario, to replace 1, 2, and 3.
So real quick, we are an hour in, but shift over real quick. We got a few months still till the outdoor track trials. Any predictions there as far as 10K, 5K, even 1500?
Is that where our buddy Craig is going to be?
Craig ran a really fast mile time indoors 2 weeks ago in Boston. He got second place at that race to the youngster out of NAU, it was what's that guy's name? It's not Nico, it's the other kid, Salmon.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Salmon, yeah.
So
yeah, he ran, I think, 352, 353, something like that.
Okay. So if let's say, he gets second place in whatever his sport is, will he go to the Olympics?
Should, yeah.
Okay.
That and 1500 is going to be, that's going to be fast this year. Even on the world stage and on the American stage. I mean, you're looking at Jared Naguse, Hobbs Kessler this past weekend just ran a blistering mile or 1500. I can't remember. He beat out Jake Whiteman, the world champ from 2022. Yeah, 2022. So there's Hobbs Kessler. There's Jared Naguse. I think we're going to have a big comeback year from both Cole Hawker and Cooper Tier. So yeah, the 1500 is going to be the event this year.
And when is that?
The outdoor trials are late May, early June. Is that right, Jake? Do you know?
Yeah, I gotta look that up. But yeah, that's usually when it is.
Right. They get a little
Okay.
bit more time, but
And that's crazy because I feel like you have the Olympics are what, August?
mm-hmm.
That's like less than 2 months to rest and get back to business, man.
So
I would say it's a little bit different for track and field, just because you're not putting the same kind of toll on your body. You don't need as big of a training block as you do for the marathon, but yeah, that's always typically where it's been.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Summer Olympics, so what's coming up? You guys, I'm sure you heard, but there are four or five new events that they're adding to the Olympics. And I'm actually kind of excited about a couple of them. So they're adding sport climbing, they're adding skateboarding, they're adding surfing, which I'm kind of surprised surfing hasn't been a part of it in the past. But the one that I'm really excited about is
breaking
dancing.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Breaking. Yeah, break dancing. They call it breaking, but yeah, it's going to be break dancing.
And y'all didn't tell me about this?
How'd you not know? Oh man.
I don't.
Yeah, no, I think I saw that a couple months ago. I was
this is the one shot we may have of qualifying videos.
Right. That's what I did. I looked at my wife. I was like,
Oh.
No,
got my shot at the Olympics here. Breakdance.
I'll give. I love America. Asia has the one up. Like any Asian country has the one up when it comes to breakdancing, in my opinion. Like I've just been watching some YouTube videos, and like they are crazy good. So crazy good. So I can't name a single person. Like I don't know nothing about it. I just know what I see and it looks cool. But I'm super pumped to watch that.
There are some really cool videos out there, and I get that's one like genre that I kind of get sucked down every once in a while, because I see it all starts with like the fun TikTok videos. Like you've seen the people who do the fun dances where they're choreographed perfectly right in front of their camera, and those aren't even the people that we're talking about. Like those people aren't even on the breakdancing scene. But you go into like the big competitions with the big groups and the things that they do, and the cohesiveness that they have to have literally like every second of the way is it's incredible.
Yeah, just get ready for an influx of breakdance movies coming around here in the next couple of years. Reality breakdance. I mean, they already have so many reality dance shows and all that stuff, but they're going to hype this up as much as possible and milk.
We're going to see a reboot of
Step Up,
the Best of the Best. No, Best of the Best from the 80s. Instead of karate, it's going to be breakdancing.
Oh man! But you know what? I still want to see Lawrence Fishburne be the coach. Is it Lawrence Fishburne? Is that who was it?
No, I don't think so.
He's the guy from he voiced in the Lion King cartoons, and he was on Field of
James
Dreams.
Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones. Thank you.
There you go.
I want to see him be the coach.
Darth Vader.
Lawrence Fishburne, right? Lawrence Fishburne could be a good replacement too.
Y'all, and race walking I don't know if you said this, Jake, but race walking is making its debut, but it's the marathon race walk mixed relay.
Yeah, because they already did race walking in the last Olympics.
Yeah. But this is a mixed relay. Each team has one male and one female who will complete the marathon distance in 4 legs at approximately equal distance.
You know what they need to do? They need to create a masters division within the Olympics, like the Summer Olympics. So those 40-year-olds and older people still have a legitimate shot to go represent their country in a Masters Olympic. They do it for like the marathons. They have the Masters Championships, and they have a Grand Prix series and all that. I want an Olympics for Masters runners, dang it. Or
Yeah, it's called
runners,
race walking.
Masters athletes.
Like, Jake, we gotta preserve your back, okay? Race walking.
Okay, Miss 20-something here. You're the, you talk now. Wait till you get to your 40s, and you want more.
My back already hurts, man.
Man, I got so many physical problems. Like, I just don't even think about it anymore. Neck issues, back issues.
And that's exactly what the theme of the Masters Olympics would be.
Have the least amount of injuries at the end of this.
Instead of the 5 Olympic rings, it's actually 5 wheels to the wheelchairs that are going.
Like, you think of like the baseball stats on the back of a baseball card. It will just be the injury stats for Masters runners. Like, how many injuries did you sustain in 2023?
Taking the field now, Jacob Irwin. He's coming off his 3rd consecutive knee replacement. Just had an injection in his hip. He's ready to go.
Telling you.
Oh no, the hip just gave out.
If you're listening, USATF, these are fresh ideas. Chase is going to be a Masters runner in a year, so.
They'd come to me. How do you feel about being here, Chase, now that you're a Masters runner? I'd be like, where am I? I don't even know how I got here.
What'd you say? Huh? Talking to my good ear.
Good ear.
How did I get to Paris?
Let me turn this up.
Yeah. We've insulted literally every listener over 40 at this point.
Yeah.
I could go on. Like, they're giving you your medal, and you're like, how's it feel to be second? You just be like, oh yeah, we're second. You're right.
Second.
I thought he said third. Okay. Oh man.
Oh man.
Instead of medals, they just give you one of the lifeline things so that falling and I can't get up.
All Masters athletes are required to wear a medical bracelet just in case. Especially marathoners.
Oh. Our apologies to Sarah Hall because she is a beast. And oh man, I was trying to explain to my wife. So we were watching it, right? We were watching the trials live on Peacock, and my wife got really into it. And out of like nowhere, I didn't plan on watching the entire thing. I didn't think I was going to be watching the entire race, but next thing I know, 2 hours in, I'm still hooked. And she is too. So I had to explain to her about Sarah Hall and how like me and her graduated the same year. And she was the national champion. Her husband, Ryan, was national champion when I was a senior in high school, and told her the whole story about Ryan Hall and everything. So, so yeah, they're masters, but I'm the same age. So yeah.
Ryan Hall is a significantly different man than he was in his running prime.
Yeah, for sure. But for good reason.
Oh yeah, like he's healthy as heck. Like he's
yeah.
And he could still whoop me in a marathon any day. Like right now, I'm very confident of that. So. Well, anyways, guys, so we've made fun of old people. We've cursed a little bit on this podcast. Talked about basketball, football, and basically other sports, and we've hyped up the breakdancing competition in the Olympics coming up.
Well, it wouldn't be an Olympic episode if we didn't talk about all sports, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well.
Anyways. Well.
I think it's time we call it a night, guys.
Probably. We've hit on everything that we needed to hit on, right? That was
Lord.
Next week, on next week's episode, we'll be talking about grandmasters and what we feel like should be the minimum qualifying standards. All right.
Well, you can email us at runtalklive@gmail.com if you would like to roast us.
Sure.
If you're over 40 and you have some thoughts, let us know. Join our Facebook group at RunTalk Live. Instagram, RunTalk Live. Pretty much everything is RunTalk Live.
Pretty much everything is RunTalk Live, yeah.
Pretty easy. You can follow me on TikTok at Carolyn McJuff or Instagram at Carolyn M. Levinway.
You got to be difficult, right, and have multiple names.
Sorry.
Nah, I'm Chaser No Pacer, basically everywhere.
And I am Jake Irwin, aka the Cultural Runner, and you can look me up on all platforms under the Cultural Runner. And this has been RunTalk Live.
We need to find a better way to like sound out, I guess. Maybe we need to practice our sound off or something.
For the listener, let's do it.
Wow.
Let's all, on the count of 3, let's all go, this is RunTalk Live. Ready? Let's do it.
Wait.
Okay. So, what?
And you've been listening to RunTalk Live. Let's do that. And you've been listening to RunTalk Live. No.
You know what? We'll try it next time.
Yeah. We'll have to try it off. We've been recording, so everybody knows how screwed up this is. So let's just hang up and yeah.
All right. Bye, people.
Deuces.